My name is Liz. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off Gray Sheet, turn it over to my sponsor, don't eat anything in between, and abstinence is the most important thing in my life. I don't know if you're familiar with my story because I think you're on the West Coast. I'm from New York City, but I have started roughly about 25 years ago on Gray Sheet in New York City. And I was not abstinent throughout the whole time. Initially, I was abstinent for maybe 10 years. And then my husband died, and all bets were off after that. I hooked up with a foodaholic, alcoholic, sexaholic, and I just wanted to forget everything. As I went into oblivion. But the sunlight, I like the title of this meeting. The sunlight occurred after I moved to Virginia because I moved in order to have a life that was separate from my husband. He allowed me a very nice lifestyle there, and I couldn't afford it anymore. So I moved down here, which was relatively less expensive, although now it isn't. And I had to find myself again. And as a result, I've had to make more of an effort, to get on Zoom. I can't go to all the meetings in New York anymore. A lot of my friends are there. And I guess because of the pandemic, they couldn't really go either. And some of the meetings closed. But on the other hand, it's opened up a world for me, internationally, nationally, obviously. And I feel like, in a way, I've found myself more because I've always found it's important to get out of your own shell, get out of your own region, geographically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and to see what the world's about, rather than to be stuck. So I started off as a young girl. I was born in Washington. My father was at Pentagon. Uh, I looked chubby in my pictures anyway. And then my brother was born in Philadelphia, we were there for a little bit, but then we moved to New York City, where my father practiced law for about most of his life. And we lived there for quite a while till we moved to Westchester. If you know Westchester, it's up the Hudson River, about 40 minutes outside of New York. Um, my mother was an alcoholic. My two brothers, well, my younger one didn't have issues until he left high school, but my older half brother was a very successful rock musician. He was also, an alcoholic and picked up drugs a lot in the 60s. So we had that, element, the alcoholism, that part of life, the drug part, my brother's unpredictability. And I was a good girl. I was trying to be the good girl. My father worshiped me for quite a while. He thought I did everything right, supposedly. And he wanted me to be more like a feminine type woman that was like my cousin. My cousin was like Barbie doll. She looked like Barbie doll. She acted like Barbie doll. I was very athletic, and I was Eastern European stock. My mother was Austrian, and so I wasn't thin like my cousin, but I was very conscious, my body image as I grew older. Elementary school was okay. I didn't worry about the food so much. I didn't see anything abnormal about it. Although I must admit that when my grandfather, my father's father, had a camp in Maine, we used to go in the summers, and he had a canteen full of sugar, for the campers. And I remember my younger brother and I tried to steal the food occasionally if we could. And then he would pretend that it was a major felony, and he'd take a belt out and slap the banister and say, "Who took my so and so?" And my brother and I would run up the stairs. So there was always this feeling of drama around food, fear, sneakiness, and tremendous guilt. So that became really one of my main traits in overeating is, there's a monster part of overeating, and then there's that image of being the perfect girl who can't, keeps it in, who doesn't overeat. And like my cousin. But of course, my cousin wasn't perfect. She smoked a pack a day in high school and she kept her weight down, but her mother was a model. So she had that kind of build. And I personally, I didn't really want to smoke or do anything that would get my father angry. He was a very puritanical, upright kind of guy. So the next decade was when the eating took off. When I got to high school, I found that I was getting heavier, because I was sort of comparing, contrasting with other girls, and I felt that they were popular. They were definitely more advanced sexually than I was. I came from pretty sheltered background and um, made to feel shame about anything that had to do with like dancing, even rock and roll. My father said, "What are you doing?" I was having twisting parties in sixth grade, and we're doing all these movements. And but the main problem was I was really I wanted to belong. I was trying to find myself. I know that's corny, but I was trying to find, how do I fit into this high school? It's like a, suburban high school, and the values were very different, than in the city. They were more like, the cheerleaders. This is the, cheerleaders and the jocks, and I was more literary. I was more a scholar. So I felt like I was trying to find my place. And the minute that I found cigarettes, because my mother always had stashed a lot in the house, tried to hide it, but I always found it. I felt like I belonged. It was very surprising. Everyone drove and went to bars, when that was a big deal. So I drank a lot, I smoked a lot, but I kept my weight down. And then I started getting diet pills. I think it was 11th grade. I started getting them at the pharmacy, and it felt great. I mean, I started to look like them. My favorite magazine was 17 at the time. There was a model called Colleen Corby, and I thought she was just, if I could look like her, everything would be perfect. So I have this image of me and then the real me. And that's throughout my life, that's the way it's been. And I thought, well, if I could just dress like her or eat, not eat anything and dress exactly like her, maybe find something that you look similar to her clothing, then I'll be accepted. So I started to do that. I joined a dance group at the school. It was a Rockettes type, dance group. We used to dance at football game halves, and I started getting popular. And then as time went on, I felt like, well, I belong. But then after I graduated, I went to a women's college, and all we could do was eat or do drugs because there were no men, no distractions. So basically, that's what I did. I ordered in all kinds of bags and boxes. I was on drugs a lot because, it was late 60s, early 70s. And I studied for exams, and I thought nothing of it. I smoked a lot still. And some of the events at the school revolved around food, like we were supposed to feel it was special if there was sugar, episodes, like we'd have the dining room decked out for holidays and stuff. And I got more promiscuous during college. I found there was a real association between that and food for me because I wasn't so much a drinker or drug taker, but I got into food, and I found, I liked men a lot. I mean, I felt like my father sort of expected me to graduate and get married, but it was also women's lib, time. And I got Gloria Steinem to speak. I was class president senior year. And, it was that time. It was turbulent, the Vietnam War, all that. And I just rebelled completely. He didn't like it, believe me. And then when I went to New York on vacations, he would take me to, like, Ibsen plays where there are very strong women protagonists. And then I'd argue with him about it, and he would get so angry. It was scary. He was a rageaholic, by the way. So when I worked on Wall Street, after I left college, I got a job on Wall Street as an editor. And that's when my eating took a dangerous turn. I was an OA. My mother got me into ACOA, thank goodness. She was an AA. And then I got into Al-Anon, and then I got into OA. That's the trend. That's how it worked out. And then ultimately I got to GreySheet as the most important program for me, but I had to take time to find it. It wasn't easy. I always wanted to deny I had an eating problem. I didn't want to face it, let's say, especially since my siblings were heavy into drugs and pills. And I thought, compared to them, I'm okay. But I wasn't okay. I had this yo-yo way of life with eating and everything else. I could be high or low. I was diagnosed later with bipolar, but at that time I wasn't. I was high. If I felt good about myself, it was great. I was thin. Everything was great. I didn't want to eat so much. I wanted to, you know, um, focus on what I was doing, work, relationships. If it was
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. So when I was down, I would, stay at home, isolate, eat. Um, Or I would go to bars and just kind of, I had found drinking buddies, and we would just go to bars and drink ourselves to death. One time I was at the World Trade Center at a bar, and I remember I didn't know where I was. And it was almost like someone scooped me into a cab to get home. And I thought, how did I survive these times? Like, driving to bars in high school, getting plastered at a bar in Wall Street. Like, just how did I survive? Well, I am a survivor, and I think a lot of people in Gray Sheet are because we've, many of us have been through, trying experiences, and we've made it out the other end, a day at a time. But still, we did, make it. This finding this program is like finding the fountain of youth, at least for me. I'm 73, but I feel like I'm a lot younger. I know I act immature a lot, but I think I look better than I ever have almost, except for the wrinkles, because, I'm very energetic. I have two jobs. I volunteered at Army Hospital with my dog. I walk constantly. I swim almost every other day, and I eat gray sheet food. So my health is very good. I've been lucky. I mean, I know that's not the answer, but I've been pretty lucky with that, genes. Um, so just to continue on, I went to a UN party one day. I was an editor. I was meeting people from the UN world, diplomatic world. And I met this tall, handsome guy from Estonia, and he was a Canadian embassy rep, diplomat. And, I fell head over heels over him. And we were going out the first year. I was already thinking wedding bells. Oh, my father will be so happy. It's always pleasing my father. And he stopped calling out of the blue suddenly. He just didn't call me back. And this is after a year of being heavily into the relationship. So I went on a downward spiral where I stopped eating basically. My mother was scared I'd have to go to the hospital because I became close to anorexic, not quite, but very close. So I wanted to deny myself everything. I felt rejected, I lost everything. I didn't like my job that much, so he was everything to me. And then I found Gray Sheet. I was in OA for about 5 years, and I loved OA, but a few people stayed the same weight for a while, and they were, obviously they were having challenges and needed to lose a lot. So that wasn't the reason, though, that I went to Gray Sheet. The reason was it was 3 blocks from where I lived. They had a 7 a.m. meeting at Jan Hus. And before I went to Wall Street, I went there as part of a regimen. I found out about it through OA at that particular place. And the minute I went there, everything clicked because the people there looked very happy. They looked energetic. They looked um, bright and shiny and just, very focused and very driven. And I love the camaraderie too. And it wasn't like a laissez-faire attitude. It was like we're all on a mission, but we're all very supportive of each other. So I did that, and I formed most of my Gray Sheet relationships from that particular meeting. And then, as long as I stayed in New York, I went to Soldiers, Sailors. You may know some of these names, I don't know. And I went to quite a few different ones. And then I also went to AA because I had to make up 90 and 90 with AA meetings in New York. So I met my husband at the 79th Street workshop. He was in AA. And we had a wonderful marriage. And then he died of cancer. And that's why, I moved down here. So it was a blessing to find Gray Sheet. It was a real up and down roller coaster ride, for a bit. I had to feel my feelings. I couldn't hide in food. But I found that I perform well. I performed well at work, and I knew who I was. I said, "This is the real me on Gray Sheet. This is me." I've been looking my whole life for me. Not what my father wants me to be, not what my boss wants me to be, not what so and so wants me to be. It's me. I respect myself finally. I don't hate myself. I don't want to eat over someone leaving me. So I felt like that was the greatest gift Grace she gave to me. And today, the flexibility, the portable aspect of Grace Sheet. 1 minute, or that is that it? Hello, was that it? That was a timer, right?
It's time. Yeah. When
Okay,
go
sure.
ahead and just finish up. No
I'll
hurries.
just finish up. Okay, so I forget what I was gonna say. Okay, I guess I'll just leave it because I forgot. At one part about getting older is you forget a lot within a minute. So, but I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks for asking me, and I can't wait to hear you share.